So hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Once again, this is Amber Melanie Smith, nonprofit founder, executive director, and I do these YouTube videos on starting a nonprofit, fundraising, etc. to make your social impact journey a success. And today I wanted to bring on a special guest, Pat Duffy from The Giving Block, because there's one particular topic in the realm of fundraising for nonprofits that I know pretty much nothing about, and that is cryptocurrency, how to accept it, not even much about what it is and how it can really help nonprofits. So Pat, share a little bit about who you are and what your company does.
Yeah, Amber, thanks for having me. The basic idea behind cryptocurrency is it's a new form of money that doesn't require intermediaries. So we've always needed banks, central banks, people to authorize transactions, people to print the money. And we couldn't create a digital version of it because it's, one, easy to counterfeit, two, kind of hard to trace. There were a lot of ways that people could go into a backend, manipulate transaction records, and Bitcoin was kind of the first digital currency to solve those problems. And then when it comes to nonprofits, the main reason people give it is tax incentive. It's classified as property, so it's more of like a stock than it is a currency. So because it's a volatile asset, price changes a lot, and it's pretty easy to give. It's been rising in popularity and more nonprofits are taking it. So we as a company, we set up nonprofits to take cryptocurrency donations, and we help make sure that donors find it really easy to find those nonprofits and make their donations.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't really think about, the tax deductibility of it, but I'm in this realm, maybe what you would call like a late adopter. And so I kind of get the sense that maybe there's some others like me in the nonprofit world who might not fully get it, might be a little wary of it. So, I mean, is it safe? Like, is it legit? Is this the question you get all the time?
100%. Yeah. So nonprofits are pretty much always kind of late to adopt every technology, getting a website, accepting credit cards. I think that's part of the reason why there wasn't a company like ours for a while, and it was pretty much a for-profit industry. It's just kind of hard to convince traditional actors that are riding entirely on reputation to get into a technology that's pretty untested. But it's been around now for longer than Instagram, so a lot of those waters have already been waded through. And generally speaking, a lot of the misconceptions just come around the idea that early on in the internet, people were buying and selling drugs using cryptocurrencies. And then as a result of that, people thought it was a really good currency to buy and sell drugs with, but everyone who did that got caught because it's the most traceable money ever. So governments pretty much weren't paying attention to it when it first came out because no one thought it was a thing. Once it became a thing, governments just said, okay, let's trace it. Turns out it's really easy to trace. Everybody got caught. And now we have the most transparent and open financial ecosystem of all time. So it's kind of been turned on its head and become like a really pro kind of human rights and open financial ecosystem. So yeah, more nonprofits are getting into it as they start utilizing it more and more for international remittances or paying female developers, for instance, in Afghanistan, when they're trying to learn how to code and they can't control their own financial accounts. There's a million different applications, but ultimately, yeah, nonprofits often think it's kind of a sketchy technology, but it's become more or less the most equitable financial system we've had to date.
Okay, so, there's various ways nonprofits can raise money and different types of donations. We talked about just a few minutes ago, we talked about stocks and, just cash donations. Why should nonprofits consider and target cryptocurrency? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, so this is a big one. The main disadvantage early on was it was hard to take. So it was just like a complicated technology in the sense that you weren't building your own Wi-Fi router when the internet was first a thing. It would have been a ridiculous thing to try to get into. Cryptocurrency has now become really easy to take. Other than that, the only real barriers would be, is it actually worth our time? So it's not even a matter of, is it super difficult, but is it even worth taking, the 20, 30 minutes to have a conversation, figure out which system you want to use for it. Currently, there's about 100 million people using it. So for context, there's about 40 million people on Venmo. So it's about 2.5 times larger in terms of a financial ecosystem. So it's incredibly significant. It's more than pretty much all of the millennial payment apps that you could imagine people using traditionally. Younger donor demographic, millennials and Gen Z, is more likely to use it. Millennials and Gen Zs are more likely to invest in it. So they have the tax offset capacity built in there as well. And then you bundle all those things together and you pretty much go, okay, if it's this easy to accept cryptocurrency donations, if there's this many millions of people who have it, and if so many of them are most incentivized to give crypto versus any other payment method we're taking currently, then it's just kind of a matter of, updating your documentation internally and setting up a system. But yeah, long story short is there's not a whole lot of hurdles other than the idea of like getting over it psychologically and adding it to a donation page.
For like someone who would donate cryptocurrency, why would they be incentivized to donate that way instead of cash? So flipping the table and looking at it from the other perspective.
Yeah, so it's exactly the same tax incentive as stocks. The difference being stocks are incredibly difficult to give. So there's a couple cool companies that we're talking to currently that are doing the same thing we're doing, but with stocks, just making it easier to give. Okay. Crypto seemed like an easy bet for us, ironically, because it was easier to set up nonprofits to take crypto than it is to set them up to take stocks. It's also easier for donors to give crypto than it is to give stocks. And because it's a more actively traded asset class, it's super volatile. It's a lot more kind of day tradery. The 100 million crypto users, a much higher percentage of them are going to be active traders, meaning they're going to develop capital gains tax burdens over the course of a year they'll need to offset. So if they donate crypto to a nonprofit to offset that, they pay less taxes. If they donate with cash, a credit card, any other way that you could give that's not a property asset as deemed by the IRS, something that you're speculating on, you wouldn't get that tax offset. So if I had $1 million in capital gains tax burden accumulated over a year, I sold a house, I sold stocks, I sold cryptocurrencies, I could give $1 million to a nonprofit to offset that original burden, but on top of that, I wouldn't owe the 200 grand in taxes on the $1 million that I gave. So it compounds and it's super significant. And you're pretty much told to donate whichever asset appreciates the most because crypto is the most volatile asset class. It tends to be crypto.
Okay, so I've been, let's see, I'm not going to say how many years exactly, but I've been in the nonprofit world for quite a while, and there is a wide variety of approaches to new technology. We kind of talked about that earlier, but not everyone is ready to adopt new technology, but there's a lot of nonprofits who want to innovate and want to kind of build in that infrastructure. Are there certain types of nonprofits for whom this might be better suited than others, whether it's size or target demographic or even the causes that they tackle?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So generally speaking, in terms of which nonprofits should get into crypto, like accepted in the first place, it's 100% of nonprofits for sure, because there's a million different ways to take it. It would really be at this point with over 100 million people using it, like not accepting credit cards. It would just be like an insane value proposition to say, okay, it's the burden it would take for me to spend, 20 minutes, 30 minutes online figuring out which place to go and get this set up. Isn't worth the access to that community who will otherwise give elsewhere, because that's the thing with a tax incentive. They're not going to give you cash if you don't take crypto. They're going to take their crypto somewhere else. In terms of like a really active strategy, any nonprofit that's on the larger side should have an active approach to fundraising crypto in the same way that you would want to cultivate a donor base of people who have stocks or other property assets to offset. You're probably going to have a larger, say, planned giving program if you're a bigger nonprofit, and you should be cultivating those relationships and investing the time. In terms of on the smaller side, rather than building out, say, corporate partnerships, planned giving, the larger approach to donor stewardship and kind of a major gifts lens, from an individual giving standpoint, if you're a nonprofit with a social media network, you should just be integrating this in with your other calls to action. So if you're fundraising for whatever your campaign might be, you have an awareness month and you're telling people to give you money, every fourth tweet that you have, or every 10th even, let's say, that you're asking for donations, just say, hey, we take Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as well. Use relevant hashtags and put them into feeds of donors that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. It's really that simple to take it. So in terms of investing resources and trying to cultivate your own audience, it's probably on the larger side. In terms of just mentioning the fact that you take it and setting up something, it's pretty much everybody.
And I would think that, and correct me if this is a not accurate assumption, but I would think that since maybe only a small percent of nonprofits are doing this right now, and there's so much talk about competing for resources and funding and dollars, that if you kind of do this now, maybe you could tap into a larger pool of potential donors at this point. Is that true?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. So there's, for context on how much has happened in crypto and the tax incentive that's baked in. So end of 2017, a little over $300 million got donated to nonprofits in cryptocurrency over about 3 weeks. Right at the end, it just went on a big price run and just hundreds of millions just got dumped on random nonprofits who had just been set up to take it. And that's kind of what incentivized us to get into it in the first place.
Wow.
I was a nonprofit at the time. But yeah, the price of cryptocurrencies, say Bitcoin, for example, was 6 cents in 2010. Today, it's worth about $11,000 a unit. So the donors who are out there who haven't formed their nonprofit relationships, they haven't moved out of that position in Bitcoin and triggered a taxable event, and they need that tax offset. Those people who are like early stage crypto traders are still out there, and they're going to be picking somebody. And as of right now, it's like a few hundred nonprofits probably who are competing for their headspace. So it's relatively non-competitive for some of these larger stakeholders, but that's still, of course, kind of a bit of a gamble. The idea that you're going to get one of these major whales who's going to give you $75 million might not necessarily happen. But there's plenty of people in between, people who have tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes to offset, and they haven't formed those relationships yet. They're younger donors, usually between 20 and 35. It's a really great opportunity to get to know different donors who don't have those relationships baked in yet, for sure.
Yeah, gosh, any nonprofit wants to receive a $75 million donation, but most of us would be happy with 500, 1,000, 11,000, whatever that number is. It's rough out there, especially right now. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, and with cryptocurrency, it's important to note, like, the average ROI, like, for crypto fundraising is better than other traditional methods, just because it's a relatively uncompetitive ecosystem for the time being. So eventually it's going to be like credit cards. You're not going to stand up at a gala and be like, where are my credit card people at? And you get 6 people in the back who are fired up. You invited them and you're taking their mode of payment. Like, for now, it's still fun. It's exciting. It's a good way to like up your marketing game, to get some new followers who are into the tech, and to form relationships with donors who are otherwise going to go elsewhere, because the tax incentive is so strong. They're going to start with crypto in mind, and they're going to end with a nonprofit, versus starting with a nonprofit and picking a payment method second. Like, everything in this is kind of inverted.
How many years do you think we have before it becomes saturated?
Saturated, a long time, I think, from a nonprofit standpoint. More saturated than now, like, say, getting from like a few hundred nonprofits competing for this to a few thousand. I can't imagine more than 24 months. I would think over the next couple of years, there's enough uptick. Every major nonprofit, for the most part, is doing this now, and it's starting to become part of the normal dialogue. Any major nonprofit conference is going to have like serious panels about this and strategies. There's more companies getting into it. Integrations are happening. Now is a fantastic time to get in early, but like, even if, let's say, you miss the wave and you don't get a whale, it's still going to be like a really interesting way to cultivate younger donors. So if you got in 2 years from now, you could still fundraise successfully. You're just not going to have like a relatively large pool of donors with a completely different offset of, say, a couple hundred nonprofits trying to, court their attention.
Interesting. So, okay, so let's say I'm sold, I want to do this. What are my first steps as a nonprofit? How do I get set up?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is just like talk to your leadership. If you're not like the CEO or the executive director, if you are, I would talk to your board, just to make sure there's not somebody who's going to put the kibosh on it, kind of after you've invested time and energy into picking the right solution and getting set up. If you get the go ahead and you're ready to pull the trigger and set up a system to take crypto, like if you work with us, for instance, what happens is you set up an account for accepting cryptocurrency. We connect that to a widget, and then that widget goes in your donation page. Beyond that, it's just a matter of fundraising in the traditional ways you would elsewhere. You're really just kind of integrating the fact that you take crypto into your messaging. Maybe you have a QR code in your newsletter that goes out, or your mailing list. You put a QR code, say, on your packet that's going out for a gala or a virtual event. You're putting out content every now and then to say that you take crypto. And then you're looking for opportunities in the crypto ecosystem. So there's major conferences, there's major online events, the same way you would have an awareness month for whatever your mission is. You're gonna now have access to all of these opportunities and major events online that you can then be the nonprofit partner or get involved with those communities. So in other words, what you would do next is pretty much just set up a way to take crypto and then find ways to easily layer it into your existing messaging.
Okay, and then so let's say we do that, and then how do I use it for the things that I need?
Yeah, so cryptocurrency, again, it's like stocks. So these exchanges are not, 80 people trading it back and forth from basements. Like, the exchanges have like tens of billions of dollars in liquidity. So you'd have the equivalent of a Fidelity account, but for crypto, where cryptos are bought and sold. When people send you crypto through our system, for instance, instance, it automatically triggers a sell order for cash. So if you're getting a $10,000 crypto gift, by the time you log into your account, what you have is $10,000 in FDIC insured cash, and you just move that to your bank.
Well, that's easier than I expected.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Okay, so I get all set up and I know how to use it and all that. And you talked about, being able to access special events and conferences on this topic, but where do I find like the everyday person who might have some of this cryptocurrency that they might want to donate to my nonprofit?
Yeah, so like a really good way to go about it, again, is like on major giving days. So like Giving Tuesday, for instance, we run something called Bitcoin Tuesday. It's the equivalent of Giving Tuesday, but for crypto users. So on that sort of a day, what you would do is your traditional Giving Tuesday messaging, and then you would layer in the hashtag Bitcoin Tuesday. And then occasionally some of your messages throughout that day would, instead of just asking for traditional donations, you'd be asking for crypto using that Bitcoin Tuesday hashtag, and then say tagging or engaging the crypto companies or users who are following that hashtag and involved in that feed as well. So they'd all be aggregated there. Outside of something like that, you're gonna end up with things like New York Blockchain Week, which is a really big kind of crypto gathering that was virtual this year. And then a handful of others throughout the year. Twitter is definitely the biggest platform. You're not going to find crypto users on Facebook as much, but that's more just like an age thing than it is a crypto demo thing. Everyone in crypto is on Twitter. They even call it crypto Twitter. That's like a nickname for it. That's pretty much it. So whenever there's a big day of giving, there's going to be kind of a crypto sub campaign, and that's growing into prominence. Outside of that, it's really just kind of campaigns and traditional gatherings that crypto users go to.
So my goal then as a nonprofit is to find where they're hanging out, basically, is what you're saying. But if I'm like looking out into my city, is there a certain age group or like what are their interests? Like how would I find them in my city in the United States, for example?
Yeah, I wouldn't for the most part. You could take that approach, but I think a lot of nonprofits, especially early ones we set up, like went really heavy on crypto specific messaging and like outreach strategies. You don't really have to do that much with it. In the same way that like crypto users or rather stock traders are going to be in certain places. There's DAFs, there's these different ecosystems where they buy and sell. There's major companies that people use to like try to find tax tips or stock tips. And there's an ecosystem like that online. I would just plug into those. I would reach out to those sorts of organizations and companies. I would see those sorts of events. I wouldn't start as a nonprofit, start hosting events for like trading tips for people who buy and sell stocks. Right. It's the same thing with cryptocurrency. You just want to plug it in and make it clear that you take it, and then find as you learn more about the ecosystem, like who are the big voices from like an influencer standpoint, a corporate standpoint, a products standpoint, a company standpoint, and then you can engage those folks directly. And anytime you work with them, if they post something about you or collaborate with you, if they have 80,000 crypto users as followers, that's going to be worth more than years worth of individual meetups in your city.
Okay, I like that. All right. Well, what else is there for someone with no experience in this realm? What else do they need to know for nonprofits?
It's a really good question. For the most part, it's like don't ignore it, I would say. So like we obviously operate in the space like in our own ecosystem and niche, like with all the different nonprofits we work with. Like even outside of working with us directly, like just learn a little bit about it. Like Google Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, figure out how big this ecosystem is. There's millions and millions of people who are using it now, and the user base appears to be growing by a factor of 2x every year and a half. It's something like at the very least, make sure that you're paying attention to it and that your leadership is paying attention to it. You don't want to miss the opportunity, so at least evaluate it. Even if you're going to get to a no, I'd say just get to a yes or a no as quickly as you can. And then this is more of a general piece of advice, but if you're already taking cryptocurrency, make it really easy to give it to you online. I know so many nonprofits who've been taking it since like 2013, they never added it to their website. And then they're like, okay, we don't add it to our website because no one asked us to give us Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And it's like, that's because it's not on your website. It's like a chicken and the egg type thing. Outside of crypto, even just make it easy for people to give you money. About half of donors who go to a website to make a donation will leave without giving because your process stinks. For crypto users, that's no different. So if you're taking crypto, make it really easy for people to give it to you on your site. If you're taking it on your site, it's easy to find. Make it really easy for people to figure that out on social, post about it and let people know. And if you're doing those two things, just make sure you're integrating in it with your active messaging. and try to reach out to some of the companies and partners in the space. Outside of that, if you're not even taking it at this point, just reach out to us and ask questions or do a little bit of Googling.
Okay, and I'll leave a link to the Giving Block's website in the description below this video. And if you want to reach out, please definitely do so. Thank you for joining us today, you know, and educating me and my audience. So hopefully we can all get involved in this and get some support in this time when we really, really freaking need it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Amber. And just to reiterate, this is super easy. So like, don't freak out, just give it a Google, check it out. And I hope you all can get the support that you guys are looking for.
Thanks for the pep talk.
Thanks.